The road was older than memory, lined with cracked stones and weeds that whispered when the wind passed through. It hadn't been used by anyone in years. No cars, no carts, not even footsteps that stayed long enough to mean anything. But that morning, a dog walked there. He was lean, with a coat that had once been golden but was now dulled by dust and time. His name was never spoken anymore, though once, long ago, he'd come running when someone called Buddy. He walked with his nose low, reading the world the way only dogs can. Every scent carried a story. The faint trace of foxes that crossed in the night, the ghost of wood smoke from some forgotten fire, the lingering sweetness of apples fallen from a tree near the bend. And beneath all that, buried deep in the earth and air, was the scent of people, the ones who had left, the ones he still waited for. To the west lay what was left of the village. The houses there stood hollow, roofs sagging under the weight of too many seasons. Windows stared blankly, filled with cobwebs instead of light. The dog passed them as he had every day for as long as the seasons had turned, padding along the same path his people used to walk. He didn't hurry. He didn't need to. Dogs who have known love learn patience that outlives hope. When he reached the end of the road, he stopped where the asphalt disappeared into wild grass. There was an old fence there, half collapsed, still carrying the scent of the man who'd built it. The dog pressed his nose to one of the posts, breathing deeply. He remembered hands, rough, warm, smelling of oil and bread. He remembered a voice calling in the dusk, the way it used to echo through the fields. Behind him, the sky was turning gold. Morning light crept slowly over the landscape, catching in the puddles left by last night's rain. A crow called from a telephone wire, its sound sharp and lonely. The dog lifted his head, ears twitching, then started walking again, not away, but in a slow circle, as if retracing something invisible. Down the slope, near the dry riverbed, stood a small shack. Its door hung open and the roof had half caved in. Inside, everything smelled of mold and wood rot. But there was also something faintly human. Soap, tobacco, maybe memory itself. The dog stepped inside carefully, his claws tapping on the floor. In the corner lay an old blanket, threadbare but familiar. He circled twice and lay down, resting his chin on his paws. Outside, the day began in earnest. Wind pushed through the trees, carrying the scent of distant rain. The dog closed his eyes. Somewhere far away, or maybe just deep in his memory, he heard the echo of footsteps, boots on gravel, the sound that used to mean someone was coming home. His tail twitched once, faintly, as if in greeting. The wind shifted, bringing the smell of smoke from the east. The dog lifted his head, nose twitching. It wasn't fire, it was cooking. Fresh, real, alive. He stood slowly, muscles stiff from sleep, and looked toward the horizon. There, past the low ridge, a new scent lingered. Bread, sweat, iron, people. For the first time in many months, maybe years, the dog began to walk faster. The road was broken, but he knew every step of it, every stone, every shadow. His paws touched the earth like they were tracing the lines of an old map written in memory. As the sun climbed higher, the mist burned away, and the sound of the dog's breathing filled the empty road. The world around him was quiet, but not dead. It was waiting, as he was, for something to return. And so he walked, nose to the wind, tail low, heart steady. Every scent was familiar. Every step was a memory. And somewhere beyond the bend, the world was beginning again. By the time the sun stood high, the mist had lifted and the road shimmered faintly with heat. The dog trotted along its edge, tongue lolling from his mouth, his breath soft and steady. He hadn't moved this far in weeks. The scent he had caught that morning of smoke and bread pulled him forward like a thin, invisible thread. He didn't know what he was searching for. Dogs rarely think in such words. He only knew that something alive was near, and it smelled of the kind of life he remembered. Fields stretched out on both sides of the road, wild and half swallowed by tall grass. The air was thick with the hum of insects and the sweet, heavy scent of summer dust. Once these fields had been plowed and planted. Once the road had been full of wagons and children's laughter and barking. Now it was only him, and the slow chorus of a world reclaiming what people had left behind. He passed an overturned sign by the ditch. The letters were faded, but His nose told him enough. It still carried the faint trace of oil, and beneath that, the ghost of a man's touch. He sniffed once, twice, then moved on. Every smell led somewhere in his mind. The iron tang of old nails meant fences, fences meant hands, hands meant home. Near midday, he reached the ridge where the scent of smoke was strongest. There, half hidden by a stand of birch trees, was a house, not new, not whole, but lived in. The door was open. Smoke rose from a rusted stovepipe in a wavering gray ribbon. And through it all, the dog smelled people. One of them was young. The other smelled older, heavier, carrying the scent of earth and sweat and metal. He stopped at the edge of the clearing, his ears pricked forward, body tense but hopeful. He remembered distantly the way his tail used to wag when he saw someone step out of a door like that. But memory and instinct had grown tangled over the years. He waited instead, still as stone, nose twitching. Then he heard it. A voice. A man's. Rough but not unkind. "Easy there," it said. "You lost, boy?" The dog froze. The man stepped out from the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. He was tall and lean, with lines carved deep into his face. His clothes smelled of soil and smoke, and his boots were caked with the red clay of the fields. Behind him, a young girl stood half hidden, clutching a wooden spoon. She had wide eyes the color of river water. The dog lowered his head, tail tucked slightly, but didn't run. The man took another step forward. "Haven't seen a dog out here in months," he said softly. "Come on, then. You hungry?" The word hungry stirred something deep inside him, something as old as his first days with people. His stomach answered before his mind could. The man crouched, setting down a small piece of bread near the grass. The scent hit him like lightning, warm, yeasty, alive. He took one step, then another. The man didn't move. The girl whispered something, soft, uncertain, but stayed back. When the dog reached the bread, he sniffed it once, twice, then ate it in a single bite. "Good boy," the man said quietly. His voice had no sharpness, no threat, only weariness. "Where'd you come from, eh?" The dog looked up, and for a brief, trembling moment, something passed between them. Recognition, or maybe the ache of remembering what it feels like to belong. He saw in the man's eyes the same loneliness that lived in his own bones. "Papa," the girl said, "can he stay?" The man looked at the dog for a long time before answering. "If he wants to." The dog didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. He stepped closer, slowly, until he could smell the man's hands, rough and warm. When those hands touched his head, he flinched, then leaned into them. The world for that moment was small and kind again. Later, as the sun sank low, he lay outside by the porch, belly full for the first time in weeks. The girl sat beside him, humming quietly, tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick. From inside the house came the soft rattle of pans, the clink of a kettle, the rhythm of a place that still lived. The dog lifted his head, watching the road that stretched back into the distance. The one he had walked for so long, the one that had led him here. The breeze carried 1,000 familiar scents. Rain, wood, ash, the ghosts of all the days behind him. But now, for the first time, there was something new mixed in. Home. He lay his head down, eyes half closed, as twilight deepened. Somewhere far beyond the fields, an owl called, and the stars began to appear, slow and steady, as though the sky itself was keeping watch. Days passed quietly. The dog stayed. He learned the rhythm of the new place. When the man, whose name was Daniel, rose before dawn to check the traps. When the girl, Ruth, went to gather water from the well. When the smoke rose from the stovepipe and filled the yard with the smell of boiling grain and wood ash. He learned the sound of the door opening, the creak of the chair by the window, the whistle Daniel made when he called the hens back to their pen. The world began to fill again, not with noise, but with meaning. Every scent around the small house became part of him. The dry dust of the porch boards, the wet bark after rain, the faint sweetness of the girl's hair when she leaned close to feed him scraps of bread. He followed Daniel into the fields some mornings, padding beside him through the dew, while the man spoke little but hummed under his breath. Sometimes, when they reached the edge of the woods, the dog would stop and look out toward the abandoned road, nose lifted as if remembering where he'd come from. Daniel would notice. "Still thinking of what's back there, boy?" he'd ask softly, though the dog never turned his head. "You and me both." At night, he slept by the door. He dreamed of hands he hadn't seen in years, of voices carried on the wind, of the road shining faintly under the moon. He woke sometimes when the wind shifted, bringing the smell of the old world, smoke, rust, loneliness. Then he would sigh, circle once, and lie down again, closer to the door, as if guarding this fragile piece of peace. But one evening, something changed. It was late summer, and the air was thick with the scent of dry grass. The sun had just fallen behind the trees when a new smell drifted from the east, a sharp, metallic trace mixed with oil and sweat. It was faint at first, a ghost among the usual scents. The dog froze mid-step, head raised, nose twitching. Daniel noticed. "What is it?" he asked, setting down the bucket he was carrying. The dog didn't bark. He only stood there, every muscle taut, staring toward the line of the abandoned road. His tail hung low, but his eyes burned with something bright and searching. From far away came a sound, an engine coughing, stalling, starting again. Then another scent followed. Leather, gasoline, and something else. Something buried deep in his memory. Daniel frowned. "That's odd. Nobody drives this way." The dog moved toward the sound, slow at first, then faster. His paws hit the dirt path that led back to the road, the one he had come from. Ruth called after him, voice sharp with worry, but he didn't stop. The smell was too strong now, too familiar. It pulled him the way the scent of bread once had, the way his name once had. He reached the ridge just as the noise grew closer. A truck, old and dented, rattled around the bend, kicking up dust. The driver leaned out the window, a young man, his face streaked with grime, eyes searching the road ahead. The dog froze again. The smell hit him full. Soap, metal, smoke, and something underneath. Something that didn't belong to this place, but to the life before. His heart seemed to remember before his mind could. He barked once, sharp and startled, the sound cracking through the still air. The truck slowed. The man in the cab turned his head, eyes narrowing. He cut the engine and stepped out, boots crunching on gravel. "Buddy," he said softly. The name struck the dog like lightning through water. His tail dropped, then lifted uncertainly. The voice was younger than he remembered, but the tone, the way it bent on the last syllable, was the same. "Buddy," the man said again, kneeling now. His hands trembled. "It's you." For a moment, the world held still. The trees, the dust, even the wind. The dog took one step, then another. The man reached out slowly, afraid to break the moment. When their eyes met, recognition passed between them, raw, wordless, whole. Then the dog closed the distance, pressing his head against the man's chest, whimpering softly, a sound pulled from years of waiting. The man's hands came up, shaking, to hold him, and he laughed, a broken, joyful laugh that sounded like both relief and apology. From down the path, Daniel and Ruth watched silently. Daniel's hat was in his hands. The evening light caught the tears in the young man's eyes, the dust on the dog's fur, the long shadow of the truck stretching across the road. Daniel murmured, almost to himself, "Looks like you found your way home after all, boy." The dog didn't look back. He didn't need to. The road he had walked for so long had finally led where it was always meant to. As the sun slipped below the horizon, the first stars appeared above the empty fields. The air was warm, the earth still breathing from the day's heat. And for the first time in a long, long while, the world smelled right again. That evening, the sun bled slowly out of the sky, leaving the land in shades of bronze and smoke. The truck stood parked by the house, still ticking from the heat, while Daniel and Ruth watched from the porch. The stranger, the young man who had called the dog buddy, sat on the step with his head bowed, one hand resting on the dog's neck. The two hadn't moved for a long time. Daniel finally broke the silence. "You came a long way," he said. The man looked up. His eyes were rimmed with exhaustion and dust. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Been driving back roads since morning. I didn't even know where I was headed." He glanced at the dog, who lay with his muzzle on the man's boot. "Guess he did." Ruth, sitting on the rail, studied him with curiosity and a hint of awe. "You really know him?" "I did," the man said. Years ago. My father and I had a farm just past the hills. When things went bad, we left in a hurry. I thought he was gone for good. He rubbed his face, the motion weary and slow. Didn't think I'd ever see him again. Daniel nodded, the kind of nod men give when they understand loss too well to put it in words. He's been here a while, he said. Came out of nowhere one morning. Quiet sort. Good guard. Smarter than most people I know. The man smiled faintly. That sounds like him. He reached down, scratching behind the dog's ear. Don't you, buddy? The dog's eyes closed halfway, his breath deep and even. He looked older now, the kind of old that comes from years of wandering, but there was peace in his stillness. He didn't seem to belong only to the man anymore, or to anyone. He had become part of every place he had touched. Night fell gently over the fields. The smell of wood smoke drifted from the chimney. Daniel invited the traveler in for supper. The table was rough and scarred, but it was warm, and the stew steaming in the bowl filled the air with the scent of onions and thyme. The man ate slowly, almost shyly, as though remembering what it meant to sit at a table again. So, Daniel said after a while, his voice low, you got a place to go? The man hesitated, setting down his spoon. Not really. Left the city last month. Work dried up. Been chasing rumors ever since. Thought maybe I'd try to find the old farm, see what's left of it. There's nothing but dust past the ridge, Daniel said. You'll find broken fences and ghosts. Not much else. I know, the man said softly. I just needed to see it. One last time. Ruth leaned forward, chin on her hand. You could stay here for a while. Couldn't he, Papa? Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked at the stranger, then at the dog lying by the door, his ears twitching in his sleep. Finally, he said, There's a spare cot in the shed. Roof leaks a bit, but it's dry enough. The man nodded, gratitude plain in his tired face. Thank you. Outside, the night had deepened. The stars were sharp and bright, and the wind carried the scent of hay, oil, and rain. The dog woke and padded outside, circling the porch before lying down beneath the steps. The earth there was cool, familiar. He listened to the sounds of the house, the low murmur of voices, the soft laughter of the girl, the steady rhythm of human life continuing. For the first time since he could remember, he didn't dream of the road. He dreamed of stillness, the porch light, the hum of crickets, the slow breathing of people asleep. By morning, the world was washed clean by rain. Daniel found the man already awake, standing by the truck, staring at the horizon. Storm passed, Daniel said, stepping beside him. Yeah. The man ran a hand through his hair. I think I'll stay a few days. Help with the fences, maybe fix that roof. Daniel nodded once. Could use the help. From the porch, Ruth whistled. The dog trotted up beside her, tail wagging lightly, eyes bright despite the damp. He looked between the two men, sensing something unspoken. Peace, maybe, or the fragile beginning of it. Daniel smiled faintly. Seems like he approves. The man crouched and scratched the dog's chin. Guess we both found what we were looking for. The morning light spread across the wet fields, catching the edges of the truck, the house, the road leading away. Somewhere far off, a lark began to sing. The dog lifted his head, nose twitching at the air. The road behind him still carried its old scents, dust, silence, memory, but they no longer called to him. Ahead lay new ones, soil, smoke, rain, and the faint warmth of bread rising inside the house. He turned toward the porch, shook the water from his coat, and lay down beside the girl's bare feet. The man and Daniel spoke quietly by the truck, and for once the dog didn't listen. He didn't need to. The world had settled. The road had ended. And for a creature who had spent a lifetime walking, that was enough.